So the idea behind the Halal-Internet has been to be able to have the possibility of cutting off the Iranian internet network from the outside world at times when it is needed, and then finding out substitutes for sort of the international services such as Gmail and Google search possibilities and all of that, to essentially create an island within the internet. And in that island, all the gates will be controlled by the state, so the content will be clean and essentially approved by the regime to make it safe. It's a very good question to ask what clean exactly, and what is clean and what is not clean. And that's exactly one of the important points of this whole discussion. In Iran, essentially, a life is defined, an imaginary world is defined, and sort of the official assumption is that people live in that imaginary world. So they are essentially in love with their political system, and they are very much religious, and they follow whatever is good to follow. And so that's essentially the definition. And anything which falls out of that would be unclean and dirty. My impression of most tools on the net, and the whole net, is that it is to many extents neutral, right? So if you know what you want to do, right, you can define it in your own way. On Facebook, for example, I have a lot of very religious friends, and they're using it, and they know how to use it. You always have your own circle of friends, and you can define it. So the notion that a particular religious group is not comfortable with Facebook, I've never seen that. The situation with Facebook and all the other social networks, Google Plus and Twitter, is that generally they are filtered, but you always have ways of sort of circumventing the filtering system and getting access to it, maybe through third-party tools. In terms of how they are filtered, or to what extent they are filtered, essentially if you type in the browser www.facebook.com, generally you would get the filtering system page. Right? There are days in which actually connection is altogether lost. Or another factor, which I guess would be not very familiar with people living in Germany, for example, is the intentional slowdown of the internet. The infrastructure can actually support higher speeds, but the regime would slow it down, and would even slow it down to the point that it's not usable. So it's a very complicated and day-to-day. I think a social network such as Salam World, or any other social network, in the first place, is a good thing. It will bring another player to the perspective, so all the current players have to sort of change their rules and become more user-friendly and become more transparent. So from that perspective, it's going to be good, and it probably offers functionalities that Facebook does not offer. And, let's take it, many Iranians, for them, religion is a very important aspect of their life, as it is for a lot of individuals anywhere in the world. And if Salam World would provide functionalities for that, possibly, I can imagine it being used, but it really matters how it is introduced, who is behind it, what idea you have, how you think your privacy is treated there, and it's the whole package that would be important in this case. Now, how Salam World in this particular case is going to put together its sort of business plan, and is it going to go through individuals, it's going through the governments and tell them, stop Facebook, put me inside of them, I do not have enough information to be able to say that. But after having that information, we would be able to actually see what happens. And sort of to add to that, I think it's really good that any new social network comes in. That's good from the perspective of Facebook having to be more transparent, give you more privacy, and even if the governments, I can imagine if the government of Iran would say no Facebook, yes to Salam World, that would be amazing, because there are a lot of ways that you can use any social networks for the type of communication that you need. If this Salam World is not going to be filtered, people will find the ways to use it. The suggestion that the Iranian government would replace Facebook with Salam World or any other network is just amazing and fascinating and exciting, because it's not really about Facebook. It's about the connectivity. And our problem is not that they do not let us be connected. Now, we can be connected on Salam World or Islam World or IslamicRepublic.com or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. These are platforms. What is important is the content that flows in this platform. Now, we can imagine in a more controlled environment, the content would also be controlled, but hey, come on, we are smarter than the government, right? If they give us the platform to communicate, we can communicate. We don't really have to put there, I oppose to this particular policy of the Islamic Republic. People do it the other way around. They play with the words. They would say something which would seem like a neutral, but for a particular person, they would know what that means. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Give us the network, we'll do our job. That's my understanding. It doesn't really matter what that network is.